Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at pimping out the tricking and the difficulty and category pages. So we're going to make them look a little bit better, as well as adding a sort of a checklist functionality to the users so they can at least see some kind of an overall progress for where they have done submissions, where they have not, kind of like if you ever played video games, you can like have achievements, that sort of thing. So, you can gauge your progress or how are there any more tricks to gather from the platform, that sort of thing. Right, so without rambling on for too long, let's go ahead into the category page. On here, we're using this item content layout. And if we go to one of these, what we can do is if we just quickly go to the trick list and we do something like, let's go ahead and get a trick info card that we can display. So we can just grab this name here, replace the div. And then if we bind the trick here, and then we can do something like put a key on here. Let's put trick info card, and we'll just do the ID. So TID, right? And try to give this a refresh. So let's go in the trick info card and let's see what the map bit is crying about. So we don't have so first of all, if I want to use the trick info card, kind of the same thing that's going to be displayed on the front page, the trick that we're putting into the trick list here, so this tricks array, isn't really gonna cut it. So we want some kind of like an overall thing. So usually for the trick info card, what the trick that we supply here is a trick that we have in our dictionary. So let's go ahead and first refactor the category to supply those type of tricks instead of fetching this, right? So for this, we can go into the computer and because we know we don't really need to load it, and we can just grab it from the state that we have. So let's go ahead and put a comma on here. We'll say tricks. We'll have a bunch of tricks, and the other thing is we want a category. So let's go ahead, just remove all of this from the category. So let's actually cut this ID. We'll put it here and here because we will need it to retrieve the appropriate things. The category, we can just, go ahead and return this category here. For the tricks, I mean, we got a dictionary. Let's see what we're actually, okay, so we're using it here. This is fine. What we can do is we can also grab lists. And in the lists, we can do something like return this lists, and we can go into tricks. Tricks, we can filter them because what tricks are going to have are categories, right? And categories may contain the category that we want, right? So index of category ID, if that is bigger than -1, right? So -1, I hope you should know by now, that means that it doesn't exist, right? So give us everything that basically has this category in it, and by the end of it, we should end up with tricks that have the appropriate information, right? So this is kind of what it looks like, a little bit wonky, right? So now I want to clean it up a little bit. If you imagine if we try to put like a grid sort of thing like we have here, it will be contending for space with this card here. So I want to do something about the card as well. So let's go ahead and take care of it. So first of all, let's go ahead and make this card look pretty. So I remembered that on the mod ID, what we did is we actually put a V sheet around the trick info card. So let's go ahead and cut it from here, and what we'll do is we'll just straight up put it on the trick info card itself, right? So could have probably used the card element. I don't know why now, but for now we'll just use this, right? So there it is. That's how it looks like. Next thing, the trick list can really stay. I have no real problems with it. Let's go ahead, add a V row in here, and let's just simulate the columned layout, right? So we can, I guess, not really simulate. Let's actually build the thing. And on large, we will have 3, so we're going to be clipping it. Let's go ahead and copy V4 and the V key. We'll put it on the V call. And the trick, I think it's worth just let's just give it a more fully qualified name, you know, be a little bit more descriptive. Okay, so cannot read property of undefined, so hopefully that is maybe something that we lose when we navigate to it. Nope. Okay, so we just didn't change this here, so let's change this to trick. And that should look a little bit like this, right? So what I want to do is I want to actually step out from how we were using the trick info model, so or the item content layout, and I just want to you know, get rid of this component. I really don't think we need it for this page anymore. So let's go ahead and put a div here. This thing that we have here, let's go put it up here, and the trick list can live here. I really don't mind it there. We can put a v divider here, and we can say something like class my 3 maybe. I think that's all right. And yeah, that's around how it's gonna look like. So a couple of things that we can do here. We can make maybe these things a little bit bigger. There we go. And I don't think we will need the v divider here. I think it's all right to just have some kind of description here. We can put it in the center. It doesn't really matter, but generally that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and actually, where we have the trick list here, maybe not into the trick info card. Is it possible to set the width on here 300? If that looks kind of you know, bad, let's see, 420 maximum width. Nope, that looks bad. 360. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. If we come back here, that kind of, okay, yeah, that's fine. So now let's just go ahead on the vcall. Let's justify center. So all of this should get maybe centered, or actually it should be on here. So justify center, and probably need to give it a deflex. And let's just space this out a little bit. And I think it will be better to align center here, and instead of center, let's say start, because, you know, if one is going to be longer than the other one, we don't want the other ones being straight, or maybe we don't. You know, you can take your own designer approach here as well. Now, the other thing with this component is we have this search. Now, if you remember, for the navigation bar, we already had a search function that we sort of implemented. And we can go ahead, extract that function, and reuse it. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the navbar search, and we are going to lift this out and put it somewhere where we can reuse it. So we got this enum file here that we're not really using. So let's go ahead and just call it functions, and we'll export. Const has occurrences. I think I couldn't come up with a better name. So we'll just say search index and terms, or maybe term. We'll basically imply that, or maybe instead of term, let's just have query. Yeah, that's fine. So search index is the thing that we want to search. Query is the thing that we are gonna use to perform the search, right? Occurrences, obviously I don't know how to spell, so occurrences, double R. Let's go ahead and just copy this. We will put it here, and we're just going to make sure that we replace the correct things. So query, let's go ahead and put it here. That's going to give us query parts on the item, and how we have the item search index here. What we want to do is we just want to replace this with the search index. So just provide the search index here. So later we'll just do item pass search index into here, and then the query, just the query goes in here. So this is fine. Let's go ahead and grab the function. Let's bring it in here. So import, and make sure that it is grabbing it from the correct import. And now let's just say put search index into here. We will return it as well, because the contents of it are pretty much the same. And then the query text, let's go ahead and put this in here as well. All right, so all of the rest we can pretty much delete, and now the has occurrences, we can reuse this function, right? Let's go ahead back into the category, and what we're going to do is or actually this is going to be living in the trick list, right? So where we actually have the search, and you can see we're already doing kind of the same thing. let's go ahead and supply this, right? So by default, we'll return all tricks, and otherwise what we want to do is we want to craft a search index from the current trick that we have. So at the moment you can see we do a couple of includes here and there. What we're going to do is we're going to say let search index t name to, or actually let's do t name plus a t description, kind of the same approach. If I can spell description, let's remove that. Let's wrap this and to lowercase. So that's what we're going to search, return search index, and then normalize. So we can just say trim this filter if we want to. We don't really need to trim it, just an additional operation that we don't want to perform. And let's just apply the filter in there. The normalize bit we can take care of, right? So, I mean, now that we have this, let's go ahead and take a look at this. So something, what it should look like is, for example, if I start typing in fake and maybe one, should show me the ones that contain, you know, the appropriate parts. So kind of like that. Trick, you know, tricker. Okay. So I'm confident that is working as intended. So let's go ahead to the difficulty part and do the same. So for example, we can go to easy, and obviously that brings us to undefined. So let's go ahead and quickly find out what is going on with this easy bit here. So as it goes, you first build your application before you can change your JavaScript component. But the width, I don't want to control it from here. Let's remove the width. We will fix it if we need to later. So the difficulty here that we have, let's go ahead and set the ID on here instead of the slug. Difficulties don't have slugs, so that should make it work. Okay, that's fine. So the reason it's breaking is probably because we didn't fix up the trick list on the difficulty page. So let's go ahead and just keep category open as an example. But let's go to the difficulty. And most of this, I think, is pretty much the same. Let's copy the bit where we had, or actually, did we? Okay, so it has the fetch. All we need to do is get the computer properties in the same place, right? So let's just do the same thing. Expand this bit, put a comma, put it on a new line, and then we just want tricks. So somehow get the tricks. Difficulty is also something that we can resolve. Difficulty resolves pretty self-explanatory. We don't need to set it, just return it. I mean, that's unneeded. State right there. Let's duplicate this line, put it up here. Tricks, we no longer need that as well. And the fetch, I mean, that no longer needs to be happening. We can pretty much go to the category, and how we did it for tricks. Let's come back to the difficulty. And again, if you're kind of like watching, oh, how are you bumping between lines? So you can see my keybinds down there. And actually you can't see it for this one, but I'm doing Alt left arrow or right arrow to switch between the tabs, right? So if I see the two tabs together on the top, I know I can switch between them like that. Okay, so for the categories, we needed lists. So let's go ahead and bring in lists. And in the list, again, we're going to be filtering tricks, except here we can just go ahead and compare the difficulty to the difficulty ID, right? Because categories used to be an array. This is just a straight up property. I mean, just use it, right? The page that is here, we are just going to go ahead, copy this, and we're going to put it here. Again, it could probably be consolidated into a view. I don't think we need this VF. This should always be present, really. And this VF here as well. It's probably good potential to check if there is this. Let's see. We'll try to navigate to something that doesn't exist in a second. So let's remove this whole other thing. Category, replace it with difficulty. Tricks looks the same, right? So let's go ahead and refresh it. Easy. There we go. Forwards are also can see how some of this stuff looks really wonky. I'm gonna say, is there a min width on the trick info card? I'm gonna say min width. Okay. Let's say 320. No, 300 is fine for minimum width. So at least we're in that ballpark where they more or less look the same. Other than that, the functionality on here is really the same. So if we want to go to a category, if we want to go to a difficulty, if we want to search, if we want to add the difficulty to the search index, we can. Otherwise, you know, we add it to the search index and then we can search it as well. But other than that, for the difficulty and easy view, sorry, for the difficulty and category view, I think this is pretty much it. Now, for the second part of the video where we're going to add more of a checklist to the user, let's go to the back end here, and where we're in the controller and the user controller, what we can do here is when we retrieve the user, we can actually collect information or also send in information about what kind of submissions the user has, and then based on that decide if that submission is any good submission, and then we can display the appropriate tricks on screen based on the user that is being shown. So for the profile projection, the only times that this is getting used is in our profile cache and profile, what's it called, create mod profile cache. I don't think those two otherwise are getting used, and the get me method. So at the end we create profile where, okay, so I mean it gets used in this scope, so that's fine. The main thing is it only is retrieved when the user is, you know, getting information about them. So let's go ahead and you know, fix this up a little bit. Let's say that you should be able to see your own submissions. So submissions, let's go ahead into user submissions as queryable. We will select, I'm not going to use any funky projections for your usability because I think this is going to be quite you know, narrow place where this is going to be used. So X, yep, that's fine. Let's go ahead and just put the submission ID on here. We are gonna need to put the trick ID on here to understand what kind of tricks, for what kind of tricks we actually have these submissions, so we can display it on the user page. And then let's also grab the score. All right, so votes. I don't know if I need this as queryable. Let's put a V here and select the value, and I think that should be it. We need to list this on the end, put a comma, and that's pretty much it. We can actually, let's go ahead and grab this, and what I will do is let's create, because if we just get the profile, if we go to somebody else's profile, we want to, you know, we want to get the same information. So when we get the user, we get a flat projection. I want to understand how many times I'm actually using this flat projection. So I am using it mostly, I think, through the flat create. So when it's what's it called? When it's used by some other model, that's when the flat projection is being used. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add an actual projection, and I'm just gonna put this query up there as well. Well, not query, projection. Okay, and this projection specifically, I'm gonna use it here. I'm gonna make sure that I include submissions. I'm not sure if I need to include votes. I think let's say votes as well. Then include votes. Let's copy these two includes. Let's put them here. Remember that when the user gets created anew, so if we take a look at the new user and the one that we create there, the submissions is going to be empty, right? So none of that should map. But other than that, let's put the where clause up there. For this username, also let's put the where clause before the includes. I think other than that, on the back end, it's more or less fine. One more thing is actually from rewatching other videos, something that I forgot to do. If we go to trick view models, there is a what's it called? On the flat projection, we add a user, so that isn't actually being used anywhere. So we can go ahead and remove that, okay, and just save that. So the point of this is that we are actually returning the submissions of the user, right? So let's go ahead and just create the UI for displaying this information, right? So this is actually going to be pretty cool because our user pages are kind of empty right now. So this was the index. I want the index in the profile. And there it is. So if we log in, so we can take a look at this test password. All right, close, come back here, go to the profile. So one thing that we can verify right now is if we open up view and we take a look at the base state and profile, we will see all of the submissions that we have, right? So we have a lot of submissions. We do not actually have as many tricks as we have submissions, right? So what I want to do is I want to display completed tricks here. So let's go ahead and do that. So for where we have the profile with the username here, let's go ahead and put a V divider. As always, you gotta put a little bit of margin on here, otherwise it's gonna look like it's, you know, it's two together. Now we will first build, because we will need to share this logic with the user page. We will build up the logic here. Let's remove this console log. We will build up the logic here. We're gonna take it out into a mixin, and we're gonna share it with the next thing, right? So this pattern of development should seem pretty familiar at this point. Let's go ahead and put this here. Because we have a reference to all the submissions, and all the submissions understand what trick ID they have, we can now take all the trick IDs that we have and retrieve all the trick names from the data in the store, right? So let's go ahead and go to tricks, and we're going to grab all the lists, right? Because that is how we take a look at all of our tricks. Let's go ahead, say completed tricks, and we can go ahead and return. So if you're ever wondering how can you come up with these sort of solutions, again, it will come back to the sort of idea where you don't think of the constructs, you don't think in terms of all this JavaScript syntax, don't think in terms of C# syntax, think about the data. So you have tricks, so you have some kind of amount of tricks. You want to, and then you basically have some kind of amount of submissions. You want to grab all the tricks only for the submissions that you have, okay? So we want to grab from our submissions the trick IDs. So then we have a collection of trick IDs, and then we want to say, let's get rid of the duplicates, right? So we only want to grab unique tricks. So we have a unique set of trick IDs, and then we say for each trick ID, go ahead and grab me a trick, right? So this is how you want to think. Notice that nowhere in there, I mean, I did say set, which is kind of like a JavaScript, a programming construct kind of thing, but a set, it also has meaning outside of programming, right? So what I'm saying is, when you're trying to come up with solutions, don't try to think in terms of programming constructs like, I'm going to take an array, I'm going to iterate through an array, and I'm going to pick it at index 2 and 3. No. You want to think in terms of submissions. What data, what kind of things does a submission have? Try to extract those things from that data and use that thing then to extract something from somewhere else. And you think in terms of aggregates instead of a particular constraints that a language puts you in, right? So you're working with data, you're not working with syntax per se. So in the lists, we're gonna have all of our tricks. I mean, once you got the idea, that's when you can go ahead and map it to the programming language. And where this could probably work a little bit better with a dictionary, but let's start from the beginning, where the profile contains a bunch of submissions, right? So this profile, and then we have submissions, okay? So we have a bunch of submissions. What do we have in those submissions? Well, in those submissions, what we have is a trick ID. Remember, that is what I've just described. We have a bunch of submissions. We want to extract the trick IDs. So that is what we're doing. So now what we have is a set of trick IDs. We take a look at the profile projection. That's where we put it, right? So coming back here, trick IDs. Now what we want to do is really other C# would be something like distinct and stuff like that in a link statement. What we can do here, and this is a neat way in JavaScript that you can do this. You can also put this collection in a set construct. I'm going to do it this way. What you will have is you will have a value, you will have an index, and you will have the whole array, right? So this is just a way in JavaScript to do it, okay? We say array, index of, and we say value, and we say equals index, right? So if we have the same value in position 0 and the same value in position 1, once we are at 0, index is 0, value is, let's say, whatever, value A, and then we have the array. So when we check this, the position that is the first position that it's going to get is the position 0, and that's the position that we have. So all good. Once we're at position 1, it's going to check the array for this value, and it's going to point to the first index. So this is for the next item, which is the duplicate at position 1, so 0 base 1. This is still going to return 0, but our actual index is going to be 1. So that is how we're going to get rid of duplicates, because it's going to find the same occurrence on a different index, okay? And again, this is because if you start thinking of in these terms of constructs, you're not going to get far, right? This is very easy to Google. How do I get rid of duplicates in an array? It's a matter of coming up with a solution that I don't actually. I want to the set of trick IDs that I have, condense that into unique values, right? Once we filter that, what we have is a collection of unique tricks, okay? Or we can say completed trick IDs, whatnot. And here, maybe it will be a little bit easier to do something like this, where we can go into dictionary, grab the dictionary, go into tricks, and extract a particular trick, right? Because the unique tricks are trick IDs, right? And that's pretty much it. Now what we can do is we can use these tricks any way that we've used them in previously. But the way that I'm going to use them is I'm just going to have a div here, where inside of here, let's place a v chip. Right? Oh my god, I love using this v chip. I don't know why. Let's say trick in completed tricks. We'll say trick name, and this should hopefully trick dictionary is not defined. Not good. Okay, so just this dictionary. Cool. Now let's give this a refresh. And there we go. Unique tricks, right? So what would happen if we wouldn't include this bit here? Just to give you an idea. There we go. You can see we have duplicates, right? So that's what that bit does, in case you're confused. Right. Let's sort this out a little bit. What is this? We want this small, right? We wanna make them a little bit separated. So margin bottom 1, margin right 1. Just a little bit like that. Cool. What if we want to click on them and navigate to somewhere, right? So let's go ahead and do that. And particularly what I want to do is if I click on one of these, once I go to the page, I want to show the user's submission, which this is. So let's go ahead and do that. In the methods, what we're going to say is go to submission. We're gonna supply a trick here, and in here, let's say this router push, and we're gonna provide the location. So we're gonna go to tricks. Let's do a little bit of string interpolation here, or string formatting, whatever it's called. We go to the slug, and now what I want to do is I want to go to some kind of particular submission. Okay, so this is where our idea of we just want to display the tricks for our submissions kind of falls down, because once we do actually click on the trick, we want to know what submission it belongs to. Okay, so what really this needs to be is the same list of submissions. Okay, so let's clear this up a little bit. We no longer want a unique set of IDs. What we want is a submission trick pair. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of this map right here. What we will do is when we get the array, let's go ahead and map the trick ID here, right? Because then we can compare it to this trick ID here. And by the end, we're gonna have submissions. So now once we do have the submissions, this will be a submission where we can have say submission. We can just put it here like this, and we can say that this is the trick. And I think with this approach, let me probably want a little bit of this in here, like that. Just put everything on correct lines. Oh, all right. Hey, there we go. And trick ID here. And now once we come here, what we should be able to do is actually deconstruct the trick and submission. Deconstruct the submission as well from the object that we received there. So when we actually go to click, we can supply the full object here. We can actually go to submission. So we can, let me just put these on different things, and actually probably need a key on here. So let's say profile trick chip, and we'll just say submission ID. I think that's the thing that's going to be unique. And the thing that we want to put in there is the, let's say, trick slug and submission ID, right? So trick slug, let's say it goes here. Submission ID goes here. Okay, so let's grab this. This will be the submission ID. Trick slug will be here. Okay, let's go ahead and see if this works, right? So still the same filtered list. However, if we click on this now, you can see that we're selecting the ID and we are going to a particular page. So I think I might have messed this up a little bit with the, okay, so it's trick, it's not tricks. So let's just fix this here, right? So trick slug, and there we go. Okay. So let's just refresh this, make sure that we can go to a particular thing. Good. Now what we want to do is we want to display this particular trick once we arrive on this page, right? So on the submission feed, this is where, I mean, the bulk of the work will need to happen. Just clarify one thing that it doesn't, because we are reusing it here. I don't think, what do we provide? We provide a latest and top, or do we on the, yeah, so latest and top on both of them. Okay, that's fine. So the default, we can set this to latest. Primarily why I'm doing this is I will need a fetch function here that will do a little bit of heavy lifting for me. So this will, I'm not gonna set this to immediate anymore, so we can go ahead and you know, stop being too creative. The thing that we're gonna need to do here is kind of synchronize loading content. So we want to load the content first and then check if we have any duplicates. And then furthermore, if we're loading more content, we want to make sure that we are, not going to reattach the item, because what's going to happen is the item may or may not get loaded first. At the moment we have a small quantity. That item might have been posted like, 2 weeks ago or something, and there might have been 100 more submissions. You're never going to see that item. So we want to fetch that item separately, attach it to the front of the queue. If it's already in that list, remove it from there, okay? So let's go ahead and see how we can do this. On the feed, this is what is going to load the content, okay? At the moment, let's go ahead and refresh this, and what should happen is the feed shouldn't load, okay? So the feed's not loading. Good, that is what we want. So this load content. So once we call load content, this is where the content loads again. Yeah, so we load the content, the items get pushed to an array. What we want to do now is we want to check the route. So we want to extract a submission query. So we want to say something like if this route query submission. So there's the submission. If we do have it, let's go ahead and do something. So we can then say something like submission equals this Nuxtjs get, and we can go to, I don't know if we have actual API submissions and get a particular submission. So we can do something like this, put this here. So if we do have it, go ahead and fetch this thing. We will extract this submission here. And the thing that we want to do with this submission is we want to grab an if statement, and let's say this content dot map, and let's pick out the ID, index of, submission ID, the one that we've just retrieved it. If we have it, go ahead and remove it. So let's say const existing index. Let's put it there. If we have it, let's do this. We will go to this content and we will splice at the index for one length. So we'll just pop the item. We're not going to replace it here. What we will do is we want to insert at the start. So by the end of it, in the content, we will just unshift the submission. Okay, so we just pop it at the beginning. Now for when we actually go to load the content again, the part where we have the, actually, sorry, I've probably been a little bit confusing. In the feed, when we parse the content for each of these, what we want to do is we want to perform a similar check, although we're not that concerned with the index here. So for this, we can say if this dot content, so if the current content has some item, so we can call this y or not, or whatnot, that the ID of equals xid, so the incoming item. If there is some, or let's say if there is none, that's when we want to add. So if a duplicate gets loaded, it's not going to be added. Okay, username of undefined. Okay, that might be a submission controller problem. So when we get one of these, yep, that's not something we do. So let's take a look at the best submission example here. Let's change this to, where we will include a couple. Let's pop this up here. Let's pop this here. First our default with the select with the thing, and another thing on the thing, and don't forget the thing. Right, easy. Yeah, just make sure your query looks fine. Right. Let's go ahead and give it a refresh. Connection refused. This reloading. Yada yada. Username of undefined still. Cool. Okay, let's go ahead and try to figure out what is happening. It's definitely not happening on here. Let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, So make sure that you await on your promise calls, a mistake I do quite a bit, it seems. Okay, so what has happened here is a typical if statement miscalculation. So what we want to do is we want to handle it. So the feed is not getting loaded. It was loading before. The main problem is right here. For all incoming content, this would be a one piece of content. If there are some that don't equal, and if there are none, it will never add it. So if we have a complete, okay, so if there are some that are equal, the actual representation, if there are none, would be putting a not at the beginning, right? So let's go ahead, give it a refresh, and there we go. So the main thing that's happening here, if you can't see it, is this bit here. So this max height and min height. So if we go ahead, I apologize if this is confusing. I'm pretty 100% sure this is not the most confusing thing you've seen me do. So if you're up here in the tutorial, props to you. You're gonna stick this one out as well, right? Comment this out. Let's refresh this. Min height, max height. You know, if we put this the other way around, it will remove the other item and put it at the top here. And because we have the check, if we scroll for an item that, you know, we've selected differently, so I don't know, like trick 18, probably about maybe this submission, it selects, we probably want to select a different submission or regulate which submission. I don't think we'll have enough time today, but for now, let's just truck along a little bit, right? So we are displaying the submission at the top. Let's just highlight it a little bit. Let's just make it pop a little bit, because, you know, it's you've clicked on a button, you know, just do a little bit more displaying on what it is that we're actually showing here, right? So on the submission itself, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say in the computed data, let's just say highlight. If I'm gonna go back here, back to submission, if we have the submission in the route, let's say this route query submission equals this submission ID, otherwise false. Okay, and I mean, do we need to check it? I think this will be enough. Otherwise, it will be undefined. Otherwise, also highlight. We can say something like box shadow 0, 1 pixel, 8 pixel, 0, and let's jack a color. Colors. Let's pick something funky. Maybe this one spoke to me. All right, let's put it here. Highlight class. Let's go ahead and go to class. Binding. Put an object. Name of the class. And condition. So highlight condition. Cool. So now, if maybe I will need to do something like not important because it already has a box shadow. Let's just make sure that let me give a refresh real quick. Not on the base state, on the tree view. Submission 1. So highlight is false. Let me just double check why. So this route query submission equals this submission ID. So the problem that could be here is that this is a string. So we can either do a loose comparison, or we can do something along the lines of this, right? So just convert it into a number. And there it is. All of them are highlighted. Nice. Yeah, let's put it like this. And I think that should only highlight this first one. Okay, so there it is, right? So if we go to that, it will highlight it. Otherwise, tricks are not usually highlighted. This is if I, let's say, pick submission, I don't know, let's do something like 5, and there you go, it's selected, right? So fake submission 3. Maybe we can go up to like 20. So fake submission 18. So if we scroll down, so somewhere where it's going to be 17, no errors in the console, and it should bump past 18 because 18 is at the top, right? So it's just gonna skip it. So that's pretty much the gist of what I wanted to accomplish, right? So just selecting a trick and not re-adding the same trick that's already in the list, okay? So, I mean, we got this logic, not too complicated. The main thing is just the chips and the way that we load them for a user and stuff like that. So let's just go ahead to a username where, you know, we got pretty much the same thing. Let's just copy a little bit of HTML. So we're just going to take this, put it here, and maybe a little bit of header will do, but never mind, not yet. In the components, let's just add a JavaScript profile. Yeah, I think that will do. Export const or maybe default. I think that will be all right. That's not too terrible. Let's see, what we want to go into the index down here. Let's just grab computed and methods, just so I don't have to rewrite them. We'll delete most of the stuff. So change profile image, don't need it. Save picture, don't need it. Profile, we can keep. Dictionary, we can keep. This submissions, so they live in the profile, so that's fine. Router, that's fine as well. On the, so the profile here comes from the data rather than the profile here from the map state. So I think I want to remove this here, and I want to, so on the index page the profile comes from the map state, so that's what I want to keep. So let's go ahead, remove this. This is where this profile is going to come from. Go to submission, let's go ahead and remove this. Map mutation save profile stays there. Let's go into mixins, profile, import it. Nice. Copy this. Yeah, it shouldn't be much errors. Let's take this, let's put it here, and there we go. Let's take a look at the errors here. What is it saying? Probably missing something vital. Am I? One more curly brace. And there we go, right? So the only thing that I don't like about this one is particularly the profile, right? So the profile is nowhere on this mixin. You kind of expect the component to provide it. But other than that, for sharing logic, I don't think it's too bad. Let's go ahead and check out the username, right? So if we would be going to the profile itself, this one we should be able to just navigate, right? So it's profile test, same thing, right? I mean, there it is. Maybe let's display a little bit of counter as a, you know, last bit of the tutorial, and a couple of things that I also want to remove. So as a counter, let's just say h6 class text h6 completed tricks, and we will just do something like what do we want to take? Completed tricks dot length, and I would need a list of tricks or count of tricks. So if I go into profile, grab the lists, right, and I'll do something like out of lists tricks length, right? Yeah, let's just grab this header, put it on the index here. There we go. No considerations for performance whatsoever. There it is, a completed tricks length, misspelt obviously as always. No considerations for English grammar either. It all goes to hell. Not really care about your grammar, kids. Margin bottom 1. Yeah. 2. I could be here forever doing this. Yeah, let's just grab this and put it on here as well. So it's the same on both sides. Just quickly sign in and make sure we got the thing. So test, and if we go to profile, we got that as well. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Just a little bit of cleanup tasks that I have written down here. Going to trick JS. Just had a console log here, a loose one. I just wanted to remove it. And going to the default navbar, where I had a thing here. I don't actually want to use it. We have a cool user header component. Go ahead, use that. We will say link false because it is a button. So let's just make sure we bind it here, and user or image URL. Just grab this thing, put it here. Size, we can replicate the size. Let's just put it into 36 here and remove this thing. Okay. So there we go. And it looks the same, but just not duplicate. If we ever change the user profile header, this thing is going to change as well, instead of having to change the code in 2 places, right? So, I mean, that's pretty much it. The kind of checklist navigation and sorting out the individual display of tricks. I'm still going to take a look through this UI. I'm going to try to see if I can make it look a little bit better, but generally, this is kind of already towards the completion stage. A couple of more, maybe 1 or 2 more episodes, and then we're gonna go into cloud stuff. Okay, no promises though, everything can change, right? Other than that, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying the series. Not too long, I'd say, until the end. Hopefully at the start of next year we'll finish and we'll go back to making more or less normal content. Other than that, if you have any questions, ask them in the comments section, ask them on Discord. Don't forget to like, subscribe. As always, I stream on Wednesdays and Sundays. I'm still waiting for you there. What are you doing? Come join. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode.